It has been 1 year since the Pahalgam incident, which was indeed a very tragic event. Whenever innocent lives are lost, one must grieve. But in that 1 year, India has lost far more than it could have ever imagined, and Pakistan has gained much, much more. How does this balance sheet hold? Today, we're going to have a discussion on this right now. To discuss all this, we are joined today by Pakistan's foremost national security columnist, expert, analyst, Mr. Ejaz Haider. Ejaz, welcome to our show.
Pleasure. Thank you for having me.
So, today marks the 1 year since that Pahalgam incident happened. Of course, very unfortunate. Whenever innocent lives are lost, one should condemn it and grieve over it. But the way that India then tried to use it to go against Pakistan, of course, has turned out to be probably one of its biggest blunders in foreign policy in recent years. So as we look back from a year from now, what is the biggest loss that you think India has suffered because of that decision a year back?
Well, that's an interesting question. See, the thing is that if you look at it structurally, India still has a lot of heft, but its trajectory has generally been defined by what I would consider a fundamental paradox. And by that, I mean that if you look at its aggregate national strength, which is a roughly $4 trillion economy, is about 1.5 billion people, and it also has military capabilities that are underpinned by high defense expenditures. I think it stands now ranked number 4 in CIPRI's top 15 defense spenders. So all of this essentially, and then of course it has a very high skilled diaspora in the West, and all of it suggests a great power potential. But the problem is that it also has a very low per capita income, and it has faced persistent development challenges, and that kind of constrains its international leverage. So this is the fundamental paradox that I'm talking about. And I wanted to put this out because I think this is the plinth from where we can then sort of talk about the question that you posited. So India, over the last 10 years, certainly since 2014, with the advent of this right-wing Hindutva government, has embarked on a policy of basically cutting Pakistan loose. And they have tried at every possible international fora to run down Pakistan. They did this as FATF. They've been doing it at the United Nations, at the various international institutions. And they had basically, if you look at the statements of the foreign minister, S.J. Shankar, it's like, this is a failing stock. And he's basically been mocking Pakistan constantly. And so when Pahalgam happened, they decided to immediately, as has been their want, decided to immediately accuse Pakistan and then also declare that they're going to essentially go to war with Pakistan. And if you recall, their foreign secretary had invited the top diplomats in Delhi and gave them a briefing. And there were stories by the New York Times and other international publications which said that the diplomats did not find a smoking gun.
Yes.
And yet they launched a war, and much to their chagrin, and much also to the surprise of India-oriented think tankers in Washington, D.C., Pakistan gave them a bloody nose on the first night through its counter-air operations. and essentially proved that it is more than a match for India. Now, these guys had been presenting India as a net security provider in the Indo-Pacific region. And suddenly, here's a country much smaller, much more constrained in terms of its resources, giving India a bloody nose. Now, I'm not saying for a minute that India did not strike back or did not damage us. That entire the 4-day war has given us lessons both in terms of what our strengths are and what our weaknesses are. So our weaknesses were also exposed. One of our weaknesses is ground air defense and so on. But the overall trajectory was that Pakistan was suddenly looked at as a force to reckon with. And I think that is where their great mistake lay.
So if I pick it up from there, then basically I think it will be correct to say that in the early days after that clash where we came out so much better, India overall, as not only the government but as a society, was in denial because they were being fed a certain kind of a narrative from the media, which is a joke. I don't know how else to say that. But they were in denial. But over the course of time, and now we almost a year, I think some of them grudgingly accept that what they lost out, that in those times weren't just 7 or 8 Rafales. It was something far more, diplomatically, militarily, perception-wise, generally where they are today as opposed to where they were a year back. It's a world of a difference, and I think they are coming around to terms with that.
The more discerning ones, yes. But as far as the echo chamber of the Hindutva echo chamber is concerned, they obviously live in their own world, and I don't think they've changed much. But a number of Western think tankers also and strategic thinkers have reevaluated Pakistan's military strength, and I think that's a good thing, obviously. Then, of course, there was a bit of serendipity also, in the sense that you have a very mercurial POTUS in White House, and he got into the fray when India launched this aggression against Pakistan. He's transactional, and we are also pretty good at that game. And so when he said that he had essentially got the two sides to stop shooting at each other, we said yes. And we also nominated him for the Nobel, which obviously we knew that no one can nominate anyone for the Nobel.
Right.
But there's that Trump likes that kind of thing. And then, of course, the meeting of, then Army Chief, who's now the Chief of Defense Forces, at that meeting, and Trump had called Narendra Modi and wanted him to make a pit stop in Washington. But Modi was mortified because he realized that he might put him in close proximity in the same room with Munir. And that would have been Modi's political suicide or death, if you will. So he did not make that pit stop, and that kind of really irritated Trump. And from there on, you had this kind of backsliding of the US-India. But this is nothing structural. This is pure serendipity.
But if you take it, if you combine what happened in May last year after Pahalgam, how they thought that they could just paint Pakistan in a certain colors, build a certain false narrative, and then go and attack it and just bully it, to ultimately what happened. From there till today, where Pakistan is now playing the central role as a mediator, and probably mediator plus now in between the US and Iran. So So from where they were to where they are today, Indians, I would say, Ejaz, that they've gone from being net security providers to net losers.
Well, I won't put it in such stark terms because, to be very honest, India still has a lot of pluses in terms of being a state with heft. But yes, their Pakistan policy has taken a beating. As a matter of fact, their neighborhood policy has taken a beating. They are
Yes, very true.
their relations with Nepal, with Bangladesh, with Sri Lanka, with Maldives. Uh, Essentially, India right now does not have good relations with any of its neighbors. Of course, I'm not even counting China because the relationship with China is characterized by structural contradiction. Because China is India's largest trading partner, but the border tensions have intensified since the 2020 Galwan Valley clash. India's approach combines military deterrence or perceived military deterrence with diplomatic engagement. It seeks peace through patient dialogue while trying to resist Chinese dominance. But the fact is that within its own neighborhood, India is certainly has been a loser. And more discerning voices in India have been cautioning against this. And they have also been saying that India needs to reach out to Pakistan. As a matter, it's a bit of an irony that Shashi Tharoor, who incidentally is a charming person when he's not trying to be, a Pakistan basher. He wrote an article after the Pahalgam incident in Indian Express, which was titled "Hard Hit Smart." And then in February this year, he wrote another article in Indian Express where he talked about the imperative for India to engage Pakistan.
But he's in a minority for sure. I think you'll also agree with it. Final question, just based on all of this now, where we are, and Pakistan's strengths have been amplified through during this conflict that we are in the center of. So both militarily, diplomatically, politically, we are at a far stronger position than we were, and then what many in India thought that we could ever be. So based on that, do you think there's a greater danger of more trouble from our eastern border, or do you think that danger has now gone down with India now knowing the strengths that Pakistan has?
Well, immediately, I don't think there is much danger because, with this oil and gas crisis, states are basically relying on their strategic fuel reserves. So military activity requires fuel. So I don't think it's going to happen in the immediate future. But clearly, unless something or some things are sorted out with India, the threat will remain. I would like to qualify one thing. Our current position, whether in diplomatic terms or in terms of foreign policy, we've definitely placed well.
Yeah.
But we must not, because this is a kind of thing that goes to one's head, and that's always dangerous. We must realize that we are beset with multiple structural weaknesses as an entity, and we need to address those because this kind of flow does not last. There's always an ebb. And the ebb is actually defined more by those structural weaknesses than the flow, because the flow is essentially right now, it's what we are doing in terms of mediating between the US and Iran. But internally, we are weak. Our economy is extremely weak.
True, correct.
Just had this issue with the UAE country, returning their money, and so on and so forth. So I think we need to have a very dispassionate
Correct. Agree with you.
evaluation of who we are and where we stand.
Absolutely. Mr. Ejaz Haider, always a pleasure. I hope that you will be joining us again soon. Thank you very much for your analysis today.
Thank you for having me.